All right, good morning or afternoon now, everyone. It's 12 o'clock. I'll call the Friday, July 12th Business Operations and Finance Committee meeting to order. Ms. Shope, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Brian Nichols?
Here.
Greg Schneider?
Present.
Brian Anderson?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. We have the agenda as posted. Any comments, revisions, questions? Otherwise, I'd look for an approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. And opposed? That carries. We have minutes from our previous meeting. On our minutes.
Yes, I do. In the middle of that first paragraph where it begins that I stated that the topic puts us in discussion is in violation, it needs to indicate before that the discussion for the purpose of the ad hoc committee was not on transparency, but was to be advisory on the budget. And it is the fact that it moved to a different topic that made it in violation of open meeting laws. I just want to make sure that it's included in there as that's what was stated as the reason for it.
Okay. Any other modifications or thoughts? All right. So we've got that with those amendments. If someone wants to move that for approval.
I move approval as amended. Second.
We've got a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll move on to item 2A, ad hoc financial committee discussion. So, again, we'll start this out as we consider what an ad hoc financial committee might look like, the goals we might want to recommend for it, who we might want to have serve on that committee, and so forth. And I would just open the floor to anybody that has any jumping off thoughts. All right. Otherwise, the first thing to tackle, I think, as we review Policy 186, is I think we need to have a stated purpose for this committee. That can be, I think, the name of it will help drive that. So, any commentary or questions on what a name and purpose of the committee could or should be? Mr. Nichols.
I would submit that we call it the ad hoc financial budget discussion ad hoc committee. That's the most pressing thing in front of us, in front of the district at this point, and I think that's where we need to focus our effort, or the committee would need to focus their effort, not us, but the ad hoc committee.
Can you say that one more time? I just want to write it down so that we can. If that ends up being what we do, I want to make sure we get it labeled right.
Ad hoc financial budget committee. And I'm certainly open to tweaking that if need be.
All right. Well, unless anybody has a specific comment, again, on the name, I think the name could be affected maybe by the purpose of it, right? Maybe that affects it too. So maybe if we go on to what we hope the ad hoc committee's purpose and objective is, that may come back and cause us to tweak the name a little bit. So what would we hope that to accomplish?
Well, I think we need community involvement in helping make sure we uncover everything with no disrespect to our financial office, They do an awesome job. I think the more eyes that we put on and focus on, every aspect of our operation, that we're going to be better for the exercise.
Okay, so part of it is gathering public input through that process, is that?
Yes, public input, public working together to come up with some suggestions,
Okay.
And to present to the Finance Committee and ultimately the board, the full board.
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts on the purpose for it? Okay. We're just going to keep coming through, and then we'll kind of summarize it and see if it makes sense. So the other piece would be, what kind of timeline would we look at? How long would we have this open? How do we know when they're done? I think it can stay open until we don't need it, but I think some guidance, right, on, is it out there for 10 years or is it out there for 10 weeks?
Well, based on the discussion that you're looking at somebody to make suggestions on the budget is due mid-October. I think once the draft budget is submitted to the board, the ad hoc committee has finished its work and is dissolved at that point. But I also need to make sure you're real clear that that's a very short timeline, and that it's going to take time to put the ad hoc committee together to begin with. So they're only going to be able to meet a couple times before you get to the deadline.
We can't do 3 weeks ago, today what we should have done 3 weeks ago, right? So that I think that's understood, that it's not going to be an easy process. So a general timeline, if we said that this committee would serve until such time as our budget is passed, till the board approves our final budget, would that be appropriate? Because that could be, we kind of know when it's going to be, right? And we know when it has to be approved by, but I think that, without me putting a date on it, does that make sense to everybody?
Well, a couple things. Number one, to your statement, Board Member Schneider, I think that would be up to the committee itself, how often they met. Again, not my decision. It would be their decision, but I would suspect that they would need to meet more frequently than once every 2 weeks.
Again, that would be up to that committee.
That would be up to them. Yeah. So secondly, I would suggest that we keep it in place till the end of the calendar year. So for the potential that there may be something that that would come up that they can assist in also up until the end of the calendar year, and then that could be a decision by the committee itself, the ad hoc committee by itself, when they quit.
No. When the committee is not up to the committee, it is up to this body as it forms it. We need to say when it is completed. It's not up to the ad hoc committee to make their own decision.
Okay, then I say December 31st, 2024.
Any other thoughts on that timeline?
What would be the purpose of the committee to continue beyond the finalization of the budget? I mean, you're saying that it's to gather input and make suggestions as to balance the budget. Once that budget is finalized, there is no purpose for that committee to continue beyond that point. They have met their obligation. At that point, the budget is finalized.
Board Chair, Mr. Anderson, sorry.
Do you mind if we let Dr. Garrison go, Mr. Nichols? Okay, Dr. Garrison, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you may not see my hand raised. I just want to make sure, if you didn't, that I get a chance to chime in just a little bit. Thank you for taking my question, my thoughts. First, I think that when we're thinking about the ad hoc conversation, it of course is not new to the school district of Beloit. However, as we formulate the team and the purpose, please understand that there's going to be varied understandings of a budget and a budget conversation. There will be some novice people in the conversation. There will be some intermediate and probably even some experts. And I think there's a space for just educating the general public and or this ad hoc committee around what is our budget and how we do formulate this conversation. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the finance department that, you know, people, I'm just going to be honest with you, people just don't know. And so to formulate this committee without the general understanding of a budget and how it's actually built in a school district, it makes it that much harder to progress to kind of where we are, to what we're talking about right now. And so I do understand the importance of the committee, but without having that educational piece there and time there, there's a space where I'm not sure how we can put the cart before the horse. And so the general education of this ad hoc committee will be just as important as it would be to bring people together and say, okay, make a recommendation to the policy committee around our budget without understanding the budget. And again, people like Mr. Chady, myself, his team has years of experience in this conversation around how this is built. And it will just take a little bit of education to get us to that point.
Yep, understood. And I think, as we choose who we appoint to the committee, or at least offer, we'll definitely try to identify and encourage people with, the right skill sets and background and knowledge to be impactful for it. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, and that will be part of the legwork, that we have to do with the committee too. So yeah, it's not, like I said, nothing about this says, hey, this is going to be easy. But I think it's work that should be done. I'll go back. I got one question on the timeline thing. So, Board Member Schneider, I agree, like once the budget's done, right, that's the purpose. However, I think it's possible, because of our scenario that we're in, that our budget could change, especially if we go to referendum in November. I know we haven't made any of those decisions, but it is possible if we do or don't go, if we do or don't pass, there could be some ramifications that could take effect in January. They could be budget related. And if not, then there'd be nothing to meet about. But I think rather than shutting it down and maybe potentially wanting to gather the feedback from that same group, I wouldn't think there'd be harm in keeping it till the end of the year. That's Mr. Nichols.
How about until we reach a balanced budget?
Well, again, I think we could have a balanced budget and pass a balanced budget, and something could affect it. Again, like a potential referendum. And so I think even saying until we had a balanced budget this year.
Correct.
So I don't know if that's the benchmark. I think, I think by the end of the year it's probably, hopefully it's not needed after we pass our budget, because everything's wonderful, right? And then, you could dissolve it earlier. So if we said language like no later than December 31st.
Okay, I move that we set the closing of the Ad Hoc Financial Budget Committee to December 31st, 2024.
Okay, before we have any seconds on that, as we go through this, I think, our board secretary also had some comments about the types of motions that we'd want to bring to recommend to the full board so that it's structured the right way. Would we want that to be a separate motion to the board? Yeah, okay. And not that it couldn't, I just thought I'd mention that since that came up in discussion. Okay, well, we've got a motion for a timeline that the committee will exist until no later than December 31st, 2024.
Right.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
We got a first and a second. Any other discussion on that? Anybody else not on the committee but here today? Okay. All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? All right, that carries.
Point of order, can I just clarify the motion?
Please do.
Okay, so I have moved to have the ad hoc committee exist no later than December 31st, 2024. Is that the right motion?
Correct, but if we're going, well, we haven't, are we going to stick with the name?
Oof.
We haven't voted on the name. That could go into language.
Yeah, I think for the purposes of that motion, because we don't have it named yet, just saying the committee would cover it. I think, could we add the word until? As you read it and put until and see how that sounds.
Until December 31st? Is that what you're saying? Instead of no later than?
Oh, no later than. I'm sorry. Correct. No later than. Yeah.
Okay. Move to have the ad hoc committee exist no later than December 31st, 2024.
Until no later than, because well, I think it could be read as it doesn't exist until, or it doesn't exist. It doesn't start on December 31st. I don't know.
How about if we said move to have the ad hoc committee dissolve on or before December 31st, 2024? Does that say what you're trying to say?
Does that capture that? Do we need to take action, a new motion to, I mean, it's the same sentiment, just different wording. We're good with? Okay. Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
So do you want to vote to rescind the motion that you just did and then make it the new motion?
Well, that's what I was just asking if we think we need to do that, or are we good?
Technically.
Well, technically, we want to do it right then, don't we?
That's right.
That's right.
Our parliamentarian isn't here, so I'm just trying to help out.
That's true. That's true.
Since the motion was voted on and I wasn't fast enough.
Well, then I would entertain a motion to dissolve our previous motion.
Rescind.
Rescind.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. That is rescinded. Mr. Nichols, would you like to make our new motion based on the verbiage we decided on?
I move that the ad hoc committee will dissolve no later than December.
On or before.
On or before December 31st,
Yep.
2024.
All right, do we have a second on that?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All right. That's our timeline. Let's revisit the name. On the floor was Ad hoc Financial Budget Committee. Is through discussion any reason to change that, or otherwise I think I'm fine with that. Might as well make a separate motion out of that as well.
I move that we name the ad hoc committee the Ad hoc Financial Budget Committee.
Do a second?
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And opposed? That passes.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Point of order. I just need you to tell me the motion because I was catching up.
What's the problem?
I move that we name the ad hoc committee the Ad hoc Financial Budget Committee.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And then I think finally we also want to talk about, we said for the purpose was to, gather public input for recommendations on our budget. Is there anything more or less specific what we want to see there?
Mr. Anderson, sorry, I just have a question about that. When we say recommendations with this committee, I want to just bring clarity to what will that actually look like. Are we saying that this committee can bring recommendations to the policy committee in reference to our budget? Because that's not I'm just trying to figure out what. I just want to make sure that I got this correct as you guys are trying to lay it out. So when we say they can make recommendations to us about our budget, I'm not sure if that's a function of the committee or is that a stance of the committee. I just want to make sure I'm clear. So.
Well, I think this committee is going to look at our budget situation, however they choose to, very holistically. They're going to ask questions, and the nature of the work is going to say, okay, well, based on what we know and what we've heard, here's what we think you should do, right? And they're going to have an opinion, so that has to come back, and I mean, by definition, that's a recommendation, at least to be vocalized at some level, whether it's to a committee or the board. I mean, they can, I don't know how they will choose to present their information or their thoughts or comments. That'll be for the committee to decide.
That's part of the charge that we give the committee. They don't get to choose that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's an advisory committee, so they're going to advise. They're going to make a recommendation. So, if, to your point, Mr. Schneider, if we're saying that needs to be decided up front, then we need to tell them who they would present any thoughts to.
Right, and their recommendations would come to this committee.
Okay.
Because they're the ad hoc committee of this committee, so any recommendations come back to this committee.
Right. Does that answer your question, Dr. Garrison?
Well, yes, it does. I mean, of course, per policy, it states that recommendations should be based on research and fact. And so I know when people start looking at, budgets, there's going to be, various opinions naturally, which is expected. But at the end of the day, the research and the facts are being brought forth based off of the school district's perspective. And I don't know, sometimes those types of thoughts can, lead people to, different opinions. But again, I believe our school district has been, under my administration, has been very transparent with our budget. And so, again, when it says based on research and fact, I just don't. Sometimes when these types of things come up, it's going to be various opinions around what we should do, and it's not based on research and fact.
Fair enough. So we've got a name, we've got, the purpose, gathering public input for budgetary recommendations, something like that.
I would submit that it's budgetary recommendations up to and including budget cuts. Again, recommendations, not, they don't make they're not making the final decisions. They're recommending to this committee and then ultimately to the full board recommendations as it relates to the budget, and that would obviously include up to and including budget cuts.
Yeah, I think it's included kind of de facto, but we could say it specifically, but the other recommendations would come to this committee, and then it'd be up to this committee to, if we want to move any of those recommendations to the full board, and present it. So I think that makes sense.
That's correct. Yeah.
I also think if they're making recommendations, they should include what is the impact on the students and on the district, positive and negative. I can give you a list of 50 things to cut out of the budget without knowing anything, and it's easy to do that. But if I can't tell you how that's going to benefit the students and what's the negative or positive impact on the district as a whole, then my suggestion is nothing. It doesn't mean anything. There's no research, no basis behind it. That's just my feeling. I think it's important that the committee look beyond what their feelings are, and to look at what is the impact of those decisions on students and on the district as a whole.
Absolutely. Yep. Mr. Nichols.
Board Member Schneider, I agree. However, we can't assume that this committee is going to work on feelings. It says based on research and fact. So that's their charge, is to operate on research and fact based on data that Mr. Chady and Mrs. Woods are going to give to them at their request. So I don't think we need to get into talking about feelings, because that's not part of the committee.
Mr. Chady, you have. Yeah, so those are good points, and I think as we take and gather these ideas, it's different than the emails we get to say, hey, I think we should, close the high school. It could be founded or unfounded, and like Board Member Schneider said, it's going to be based on research and fact, and that committee, and then in turn this committee, when they present it, will be charged with weeding through, hey, this is just, I got this great idea that's unfounded versus, hey, here's something I hadn't thought about. Maybe you've thought about it because this is what you do every day, right? So I think it'll generate some conversation. And the goal isn't to create any more work, but, for your team, because you do have a lot of work ahead of you. So, yes.
So an item that I would include in their purpose would be to study the budget, the district's budget situation. It's in policy, but also to say gathering public input. These are public members, members of the public we're asking who have background in budget and finance and education that have perhaps longer duration of understanding the district and understanding our budget systems over the years and decades. So I think studying the budget situation should be included in their purpose. Gathering public input can be included, but not that I don't think that should be their first charge.
Board Member Hankins.
Yes, I just wanted to weigh in, and knowing that the Mr. Chady and his team has a ton of work to do, I think a way to look at this ad hoc committee is to maybe not spread out, but maybe limit. I mean, to me, I could make an argument for the budget and our dollars spent and or incurred affect everything. But I think the charge on this should be kind of limited in scope to things that are, I don't want everybody to be spinning their wheels and overlapping things that don't really belong being talked about at that committee level. And I think it'd do justice for everyone involved, and especially Mr. Chady and his department, if we limit it in scope, kind of. It's kind of off limits, like obviously HR is off limits, but even things that aren't directly related to budget. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I think that it'd be better to limit it rather than do it after the fact and say, oh, no, that's not what, to get to our level, and that, no, that's not what you were charged to do, or Brian's level, committee level. So maybe limit their scope. I know it's budget, but to me, budget means a lot of things. Thank you.
Well, this goes back to the conversation that we were having about, educating the group. Mr. Chady, works, of course, on a lot of different things as it pertains to our budget and his department, and more so than all of us could really understand. And so, out of the respect for my finance department and the leadership in my finance department, I think we would be hard pressed to not start with the education of this conversation before we jump right into saying, here's, potential recommended changes that the novice, I'm not sure, would understand. I'm just being, fully transparent. What's hard about this conversation is we have provided a level of information that I'm not sure has ever been provided here in the school district. We've been transparent. We've shared information. And again, I'm really trying to understand the overall purpose of this ad hoc committee. Because once they, of course, sit down and they start to ask us for information, who's helping them, get to these thoughts? Well, it's going to be the administration. We're part of this conversation, And so without us in the conversation, it's actually kind of hard, because I don't know what people are going to be making their suggestions based off of, but without the information that we're going to have to provide to them. And I'll pause there because, again, I just want to make sure that we're capturing what the board is seeking to do. But I actually agree with Mr. Hankins. It does need to be limited to some level. Otherwise, it's just so broad. And I'm not sure where will we land in the conversation for the group, because we do want the ad hoc committee to be successful if this is what we're trying to, bring forth to the policy committee.
Board President?
I think Dr. Garrison misspoke. It's the Finance Committee, not the Policy Committee.
That's correct.
Okay. And this is not restricting Dr. Garrison's or the Finance Department's input into budget discussions or considerations. What this is doing is opening up the input from these committee members with their expertise. We're not going to ask somebody off the street to weigh in on such an important issue at this time. People who have had a long time in the district and have observed how budgets have worked over several years, decades in our community. This isn't limiting or saying you guys have to do this. They are going to they're going to study our budget. They're going to say, okay, we still need to find millions of dollars where we need to make reductions. If I'm not mistaken, I've heard that, okay, getting to the $6 million was the easy part. Now we've got the hard part ahead of us. We still are in this process. It's not easy. These people are going to be here to help us understand and help and come to us with recommendations of this is what we believe is in the best interest of our district, their district, the district of the public, their district, what they want to see. I believe that we are missing the point and trying to make this more difficult than what it needs to be. We are in a critical moment in the school district of Beloit. We have never been in this situation before. We are in crisis mode. We have to do this. We have to do it right. I think Bob Chady is the greatest finance director we've had since I've been in the district, and I've been very impressed with what he's done. This is a lot. This is to aid the finance department in figuring out what we should be doing for our district.
All right, any other comments? Otherwise, I think the next step is to move on to potential possible names. Okay, so we could throw some names out. Obviously, the names still have to, again, these would be names that we would recommend to the full board to reach out to.
Point of clarification.
Yep.
Are you going to make a recommendation for the purpose and make an exact, charge to the committee?
Thank you. We didn't close that loop, did we?
No.
So a separate motion for the purpose. I think we talked about gathering public input for recommendations regarding the budget and potential budget cuts. I think, Mr. Nichols, is that kind of what you had said? Any other thoughts on defining that scope?
Yep. With a recommendation to the this committee. That's where their input goes to this body, this group.
It does by default, yeah.
But yes, so
yep.
I think that should be stated. I think Dr. Garrison brought up a very valid point. What does this group, where does the next level before it ever comes to board?
we can certainly say that and be specific with it. That's the way it would work. If nothing were said, but I think we can certainly say that, so we could add that in there too. So, would anyone care to make that motion on the purpose and function?
You ready? You ready, Michelle? Okay.
Go ahead.
You ready, Michelle? Okay. Let's try this. So I move that the trying to put this into words. I want to be as concise, but not drag it way out either at the same time. So, the charge of the ad hoc financial budget committee is to research all of the data that is available to them, to come back to the Business Ops Finance Committee with recommendations based on their research and facts for ultimate budget cuts. That's a little longer than I wanted. I'm certainly open to modifying that from other experts in this committee.
Any thoughts? Does that capture?
Yeah, I get a little bristled with budget cuts. I think budget decisions might be a more appropriate term at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good with that. That's a good point.
Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, I don't think we want to limit them to budget cuts, but possibly, or make recommendations on possible ways to balance the budget. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're looking for is ways that we can balance the budget. So I guess I would look that the purpose might be that the committee would study our budget situation, and then make recommendations on possible ways to balance the budget to the Business Operations and Finance Committee, including the impact on students and the effect on the district.
Yeah, I like that addition at the end. Yeah, I think that's a good point. All right. Sounds like we've got a motion out there.
I know everybody was trying to create one. So. I don't quite know what you want to do.
Well, do you want to, before I have for a second?
Changing cuts to divisions, but now, I mean, like, am I adding what Greg said? Am I taking something away? Do you want to?
Yeah, take away the budget cuts. How did you word it, Greg?
I said make recommendations on possible ways to balance the budget. Make those recommendations to this committee, and it needs to include the impact on students and the effect on the district.
That's good.
Not to add any additional thoughts to Mr. Hankins mentioned the word decisions. I was trying to write down as well, so I'm just trying to help. I'm not sure where we can add that to that space, Mr. Schneider.
As I sit and listen, I think I took away my budgetary decisions and go with it. Kind of is included with Mr. Schneider with what he said. I just didn't like the word cuts. It's decision time. So as long as that's covered in what Mr. Schneider said, and absolutely the student affecting the students. should be in there.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna call that as a Board Member Nichols motion.
I'd
With-
like to read it back.
Please do.
Okay. So this is what I think you're trying to say. Hang on one sec. So, move to charge the Ad hoc Financial Budget Committee to, come back to the Business Operations and Finance Committee based on their research and facts with recommendations on possible ways to balance the budget and include impacts on students and the effect on the district.
Which includes what I jotted down. Sorry, which includes. Is what
Okay.
you have?
I had and, but which is better?
All right.
Does that sound like what you were trying to say there, Mr. Nichols?
All right, does someone,
With some moderation, thank goodness.
does someone want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
I suppose you're on every committee, kinda, right? That works for me.
She cannot second the motion. She is not a member of this committee.
I'm an ex officio member.
Ex officio does not have voting privileges.
Yes, they do.
You have voice but no vote.
Brian, would you like to second it?
I'll second the motion. We got a moved by Board Member Nichols, seconded by Board Member Anderson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
I think we'll work on, if it makes sense, the possible names of committee members to submit to the board for recommendation. If you've got names, Board President Johnson.
Carol Fox?
Jeff Severson.
My thought is we'll get these names out there and then we can discuss them here. So just kind of, if you have any others, please put those out.
Kay Nordstrom, Dorothy Harrell, Kendra Wiscala, Randy Williams, a representative of the League of Women Voters, and a representative from the NAACP.
Could you go over those again, Board Member Schneider?
Sure. Kay Nordstrom, Dorothy Harrell, Kendra Wiscala, Randy Williams, a representative from the League of Women Voters, and a representative from the NAACP.
Kendra, last name?
Wiscala, W-I-E-R-S-G-A-L-L-A. Randy Williams.
Could I get a repeat of the name that Mr. Nichols stated? I didn't catch that one. Jim?
Jeff Severson, S-E-V-E-R-S-O-N.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Board President Johnson?
Emeritus Professor Jeff Adams.
Mr. Hankins?
Dean Bill Flanagan.
Could you please repeat that?
Dean, or Bill Flanagan. He's a retired dean.
Ms. Johnson?
Bob Fitzsimmons?
Mr. Nichols?
Laura Grube, Associate Dean, I think it's Associate Dean of Economics Department at Beloit College.
Is there anybody on this committee that wants to be on that as well? You know, great. Mr. Schneider, you put your name on the list as well?
I would like to serve as the liaison.
Mr. Anderson, just a point of thought. We would definitely want a representative from the VEA on the team. Of course, definitely just putting a thought.
Yep. Any other groups or individuals that we want to make sure are represented?
Do you have any recommendations, Board President or Chair Anderson?
I mean, I will sit on it as well, if that works with everybody too. But I think these names are names that I've, heard all these thrown out, and I think those are all appropriate names. I think that's one thing we haven't discussed is the size. Okay, not everybody on this list will have the appetite, will, or ability to serve. So, how many people do we think this should be comprised of? Any thoughts there?
I'd like to make a thought to that. When you're thinking about the size, naturally when you work with a team, we never want to cut out any voices. However, the 7 board members, I was thinking no more than 10. Just as a thought. But the people who may not be selected could also come in as listeners, and so there's a space for that as well. Maybe not necessarily voting or recommended slots as we set the number, but they could also be possible listeners to the conversations. Just as a recommendation, Board Chair Anderson.
Okay, yeah, that's a good thought.
I do believe we need to limit the size. I believe the number of people that we have listed so far is too large. I was thinking 6 to 8, but that's just me. So,
and by my count, we've got about 15. Is what I wrote down. Counting myself and Greg.
Yeah, that'd be 12 plus the VEA, and then the 2 from this committee, and then there, of course, needs to be a representative from administration. I mean, that's included in the policies.
Yeah.
Both the liaison and the administration.
Okay. Assuming a couple of these, again, might not go, I think I don't think the number scares me yet, because I don't think we're going to have them all show up, and they certainly, so. Do we want to tackle these names as a whole with one motion? Is anybody uncomfortable with anybody in particular? Or, for me, I think I just want to make sure we got any other groups that we haven't identified. Like I like the idea that someone from BEA, and they can appoint whoever they think is right. NAACP, no problem. League of Women Voters. Any other groups, not just individuals, that we think should have a voice.
Just another point, the BEA may want to have more than just one person. I know it was just mentioned as a representative. That should be plural just in case and there's more than one person. I know right now there's co-chairs for the organization, so just FYI.
Okay, good point. All right, well, we've got a slate of names. If someone's confident to move that in a motion to the full board for consideration, I would entertain it.
I have another point of discussion. A lot of these folks I don't know, but I really believe for the subject that we're talking about and some of the things that Board President Johnson had mentioned earlier, I think we need to make sure we're focusing in on people who have financial experience, budget experience, and and a great knowledge of the school district. So I don't know if all these folks fit that. I can't say other than the couple that I mentioned. So a couple, three, but anyway, that's just.
I think some of the other ones, again, I don't know everybody either, but I think if someone here doesn't have this great financial acumen, I think they may still be able to play that role of impact on the students in the district, right? So to capture some of the stuff that Board Member Schneider was talking about. So I guess that doesn't scare me off, I don't think, but I'm good with the list if somebody wants to make that motion.
I move that we submit the current list to the board as recommendations for members of the ad hoc committee.
Do you have a second? I'll second the motion. Any discussion?
For the administration, we didn't mention any names. Is it okay with Mr. Anderson that I can just make a recommendation to the board president, or how would you like to do that? I just want to make sure we don't run into any. It's in the policy that administration has a right to be there, of course, but we didn't mention any names, so I'm not sure how deep we want to read into that.
Yeah, I think we just let each of these groups self-select. I don't have a name down there for the NAACP rep or the League of Women Voters rep. I think that those groups could, including admin, can self-select, right, who you'd want to be part of it.
All right, thank you.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. So I think the plan would be to, we'll reach out to these individuals, see their interest, and then try to get a meeting scheduled sooner than later, obviously, as the time restrictions we've talked about already today. Anything else on this discussion? If you presented some names, if you could double check with Ms. Shope on the way out that she's got the spelling correct on all those names for the record, that would be appreciated. All right, we'll move on then to item 3A. Next meeting date, again, is still Tuesday, August 6th. And now we're on to adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.